Here's 5 things I wish I knew earlier about training back. Number 1, don't be afraid of letting your upper back round forwards and your shoulders hunch forwards like this. This is the best way to stretch and train the muscles of the upper back. Number 2, cross-body exercises are a huge missing piece in most people's workouts. Number 3, don't avoid machines, especially for back. Machines help you train positions that you can't train as effectively with just free weights. Number 4 is to use lifting straps, especially if you find your grip fatigues well before your pulling muscles do in your back training. Number 5, a few short sets of stretching post-workout may help increase your gains. And that's it. Those are the main takeaways from today's video. So if you want to leave now, you are more than welcome to. But if you stick around, I'll share with you the entire workout along with more details around those tips, so you're not just memorizing a whole bunch of random ideas, but you're understanding all the details that go into it. So when you do typical free weight back exercises, normally the exercise is hardest here, in this position here, when you try to hold everything in that peak contraction. Whereas when you come out to this stretch position here, it gets a lot easier. The way that machines work, well, this machine specifically, not all machines, is when you pull back, the weight gets a lot lighter. Like, this is significantly easier due to how the weight is arcing on a circular motion. Whereas here, this is where the weight is giving me the most amount of resistance. Now, it's not a big deal right now because the weight is relatively light, but as you load up more and more and more, this position is significantly harder, and then as I pull back to here, it gets significantly easier. Now, you might not have a machine like this specific one that allows you to place the weights on different rungs to emphasize different positions and make it more difficult in different areas. But one thing that most people will have access to is a T-bar row or a landmine row. And it has the exact same properties as this weight here. I'm going to show it to you guys again. When I pull back, notice how the weight plate doesn't travel vertically straight up. Okay, as I pull it up, it's traveling up and forwards in that direction there, and you can see it's quite easy, whereas here it is significantly harder for me to hold this position. Now, I personally love all these little nerdy details about making exercises harder in different positions of the range of motion, but to be perfectly honest, will that really make a difference to your gains? I don't know. Don't know, to be honest. Number one mistake I see people making on all of their back exercises, whether it's a vertical pull down or a chin up, or it's a row of some sort, is they lock their shoulder blades into one position, like this for example, and just perform this partial range here. And for an overhead pull down, it might be something like locking themselves in position and just performing that motion from here to here. What you want to do instead is let your shoulder blades completely elevate and roll up or roll forwards and allow your back to round out, to fully stretch out all the muscles through your back. So one thing you'll see me emphasizing a lot on the pull downs and on all the rows that I do is I'm really trying to think about opening up and reaching around as much as possible. Depending on the setup, depending on the exercise, depending on the angle that you're pulling from, this will feel a lot better on some positions more than others. And on those exercises, you should definitely try to let your shoulder blades roll forwards more. Another mistake that a lot of people make with their training is they haven't liked this video or subscribed to the channel. It's crazy, isn't it? But not you, right? You've liked the video. You're subscribed, right? The most important exercise I think people are not doing enough of for their back is any exercise that has their arms crossing over the midline of their body. If you think about how most people are doing their pull downs and their rows or any pulling back exercise, whether their arms are on shoulder width apart or slightly wider or slightly narrower, these motions have you fixed in one plane, and they don't let you fully stretch out the back muscles by having the arm coming across the midline. If you look at this here, if I perform this exercise in a typical straight up and down fashion like this, I'm going to get a fair bit of a stretch here in my back muscles. But if all I did was slightly offset my body like this, so now I'm pulling around my body, you can see straight away how that stretches out these muscles that little bit more. So now I'm reaching around and across my chest slightly. That increases the stretch and opens up the stress onto my back muscles here. So again, the other variation would be me just being straight here like this, pulling straight in. It's not a bad exercise whatsoever, but it won't give you the same stretch as if you just pivoted your body around ever so slightly. This idea of stretch-mediated hypertrophy, or training your muscles when they're in a full stretched position, or just stretching out your muscles in general, seems to be a really important factor for building muscle. This applies to just about all muscle groups, especially the back, and I think it's one of the biggest things that's holding people back from one thing, a muscle building perspective, but also an overall movement quality and maybe mobility perspective, where if we're never going into certain ranges of motion and strengthening those ranges of motion, it makes perfect sense as to why I might lose access to those ranges of motion over time. So stretching is one of those things that I've changed my mind on a lot back and forth over the last 10, 15 years when it comes to training. When I first started training, I was doing a lot of stretching. I'd be doing like an hour 3 or 4 times a week as separate sessions. And then I went to the other extreme where I stopped doing any stretching whatsoever and just focused a lot more on training through as large range of motion as possible. But now I've come back around to this idea of stretching because I've finally gone through all of the research that there is on stretching and found it to be incredibly promising. But to cut a long story short, the way that I've got this set up right now is I'll pick a body part such as my back muscles, my lats, and I'll do around 3 to 5 repetitions of about a 30 to 60 second hold. So what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing on, and I'm just mimicking that same stretch position I was in with the cross body pull down. And I stretch out my lats and I find a point of discomfort where I really am working into that stretch, and I'll time this and I'll hold it for about 30 to 60 seconds, and that counts as 1 rep. Then I'll switch sides and I'll go back and forth for about 3 to 5 total reps. So from some of the research on calves where they would stretch one side and not the other, and saw significant improvements in muscle mass on the stretching side versus the non-stretching side, I believe they were doing something like 6 different stretches for 2 sets of 45 seconds each. And they were doing this for about 10 minutes total post-workout 4 to 6 times per week, which is quite significant just for the one muscle group. So how much of a benefit I'm going to be getting just from doing it maybe once or maybe even twice or 3 times a week, I don't know. So there might be some muscle building gains here, maybe, but at absolute worst, I'm getting a nice relaxing stretch at the end of my workout to help calm my nervous system down before I get out of here.